El Salvador. He was moving thousands of high-ranking gang members to the country's new so-called mega jail.
It was built to break the unbreakable. A prison so massive and fortified, it feels less like a correctional facility and more like a fortress. No light reaches its cells. No inmate ever leaves. Prisoners endure harsh routines, overcrowded cells, and the constant struggle for survival. But what happens when the line between guilty and innocent blurs? Step inside CECOT and discover a reality more disturbing than anything you've imagined. Into the Iron Fortress. Some prisons are built for justice, others for survival. But El Salvador's CECOT? It was built for fear. The kind that makes even the most brutal criminals fear being sent there. The walls of CECOT don't just keep prisoners inside, they trap them completely. CECOT, El Salvador's Center for the Confinement of Terrorism, was built to house the most feared gang members in the world. MS13, Barrio 18.
What gang were you part of?
MS13.
And do you have any gang affiliations?
Yeah.
These names are synonymous with terror. Yet inside CECOT, even these men are rendered powerless.
The other 23 and a half hours, they're kept inside and locked up.
Entering the prison, the sheer scale of it is overwhelming. The towering 15-meter walls seem to rise endlessly, crowned with razor-sharp barbed wire that catches the light like a warning. Just beyond them, an electric fence buzzes with the kind of threat you can almost feel. It's 15,000 volts standing between order and chaos. Watchtowers stretch across the perimeter, each manned by sharpshooters who never blink. Nothing goes unnoticed here. Over 1,000 armed guards, soldiers, and police move like cogs in a machine, keeping watch over the fortress. Before one steps inside, their gear is thoroughly checked. The clothes are scanned and socks turned inside out. Thereafter, you're guided into a full-body scanner that ensures nothing is hidden inside the body or the alimentary canals. In CECOT, silence is an illusion, and every step you take matters. As you walk around, the gravel beneath your boots is designed to betray every sound.
There's literally no freedom inside of these prison cells, and the only type of freedom they get is they can come over here to this area right here.
The security intensifies as one moves deeper into the compound. Each gate one passes through closes with a heavy, final thud. Fingerprint scanners track every move, and full body scans ensure nothing escapes scrutiny. AI-powered CCTV systems use facial recognition to monitor every corner of this fortress. Nothing slips through, and above, signal jammers cut off all communication for 1.5 miles in every direction. Here, the outside world ceases to exist. Since its opening in February 2023, CECOT has served as El Salvador's answer to its gang crisis. This prison is designed to trap the very men who once ruled entire neighborhoods with fear. There is no mercy here.
This prison has become famous worldwide for its harsh treatment of alleged gang members.
Every wall, every wire, every camera is part of a single plan: to imprison, isolate, and break them. On reaching the final checkpoint, the realization hits hard that CECOT is not just a prison. It's a place where control is paramount, where hope is stripped away, and rebellion is never allowed to take root. Beyond this point lies the harsh reality of survival, where just staying alive becomes the ultimate battle. Yet, for all the steel and surveillance outside, the true cruelty of CECOT lies within, where the body may be caged, but it's the spirit that's truly sentenced. A cage of torment.
Turn now to a look inside the notorious prison in El Salvador, where the U.S. is shipping deported migrants.
If CECOT's towering walls trap the body, its cells destroy the soul. Once inside, inmates face not just the absence of freedom, but a relentless, suffocating punishment that twists everything about who they once were. Here, the brutality goes far beyond what you might expect from the world's most secure prison. This is no longer about rehabilitation or justice. It's about survival. And survival here comes at the cost of humanity. Inside the prison's 8 housing blocks, the air feels thick and oppressive. There's no escape from the heat, no comfort in the absence of air. The cells, just 10 square meters in size, are crammed with up to 100 men. They sleep on bare metal bunks, packed so tightly that many have to lie on the floor, squeezed between the bunks. The numbers never add up. With only 80 bunks per room, overcrowding is inevitable. Blankets are forbidden. Mattresses are non-existent. This is a place where personal space is a memory, and dignity is stripped away.
There's no mattresses, there's no sheets. You've got a toilet over here for them to go to the bathroom. You've got this basin here that they use to bathe themselves.
The design of these cells is purposefully brutal. 2 toilets and 2 sinks serve each overcrowded space, but the water supply is often controlled by guards, and at times, it's little more than a trickle. With no windows or fans, the temperature soars above 40 degrees Celsius. The relentless brightness of fluorescent lights distorts the sense of time, making day and night indistinguishable. Sleep is a luxury few get to enjoy, and when they do, it's only in short, fragmented bursts, disturbed by the unbearable heat and light. The faces you see through the bars are hollow, drained of life. Their eyes, sunk and silent, speak of broken spirits that no longer have the strength to fight back.
This is bleak, it's brutal, it's harsh, it is frankly difficult to see.
Meals come twice a day: rice, beans, pasta, or a boiled egg, served on trays with no utensils. Forks and knives are too dangerous to allow. The men eat with their hands, hunched over their bunks. But even eating is a struggle. The food provided contains barely 800 calories, half of what an adult needs to survive. Malnutrition is rampant. Inmates lose weight rapidly. What were once muscular bodies become thin and frail with each passing day. Family visits? They are a distant memory. No mother's voice, no child's laughter, no touch of the outside world. CECOT has severed all ties to life beyond these walls. Some inmates hang hammocks in an attempt to find some small relief from the overcrowded conditions. Security is always watching. Cameras blink from every corner, recording every movement, every conversation. For 23.5 hours each day, inmates are confined to their cells. The half hour of exercise they're allowed is a fierce affair, as the inmates are shackled at the wrists and ankles, surrounded by armed guards.
Prisoners shackled run out of their cells for a bunk inspection. Lined up, shirts off, head on the man in front of them.
There is no privacy. There is no peace. Only the crushing weight of control. Inside CECOT, the objective is clear: to break the spirit of those who once held power. This isn't a place to rehabilitate. It's a place to humiliate, to dominate, to strip away any shred of resistance. It's a place where fear and dominance replace any hope of change. But why would El Salvador create something so extreme? To understand that, we must first look back at the chaos that consumed its streets. A nation bleeding. Before the prison's concrete walls rose from the countryside, the country was drowning in blood. Streets were not just dangerous. They were ruled by gangs. Entire neighborhoods lived in fear of men who enforced their laws with bullets and blades. In 2015, El Salvador earned a horrifying title: the murder capital of the world. The country saw 103 homicides per 100,000 people. That number didn't come from war. It came from its own streets. MS13 and Barrio 18, rival gangs born in Los Angeles and spread like wildfire across Central America, were locked in a deadly turf war.
And these gangs from El Salvador are now operating in nearly every corner of America.
Their business was built on fear, extortion, kidnapping, and executions. They painted entire blocks with graffiti, claiming territory and warning outsiders. For many Salvadorans, going to work or school meant walking a gauntlet of threats. Some never made it home. Everything came to a head in March 2022. In one weekend, violence erupted on a scale the country hadn't seen in years. 62 people were murdered in 3 days. It was chaos as stores were closed, buses stopped running, and families locked their doors in silence. The gangs had sent a message that no one was safe. This massacre became a turning point. President Nayib Bukele responded with force. He declared a state of emergency, suspended constitutional rights, and launched a military-style crackdown.
They've arrested more than 20,000 people in the last month and a half as they seek to clean the MS13 and Barrio 18 gangs.
Police and soldiers arrested thousands, men, teenagers, and anyone suspected of gang ties. By 2024, over 87,000 people had been detained, but the old prisons couldn't hold them. Many were already over capacity. Cells meant for 30 men held double that. So, Bukele made a new plan. A mega prison built to end the chaos once and for all. In mid-2022, he announced CECOT, a $100 million facility designed to hold 40,000 inmates, all tied to gangs. Construction moved fast. By February 2023, the prison opened its gates. Towering walls, electric fences, and armed patrols sent a clear message. El Salvador was taking control back.
It translates to the Center Terrorism Confinement here in El Salvador. It is the biggest and most up-to-date prison in all of the Americas.
The public cheered. After years of bloodshed, peace seemed possible. By the end of 2023, homicide rates had dropped sharply. People walked the streets again. Bukele's approval rating shot past 90%. For many, CECOT was not just a prison. It was proof that the nightmare was ending. But the silence came at a price. Human rights groups sounded alarms. They warned of false arrests, overcrowded cells, and cruel conditions. Still, for now, most Salvadorans seem willing to trade freedom for safety. CECOT stands as the beating heart of Bukele's war on gangs.
And the conditions really are brutal. We saw at least 80 prisoners in each cell sharing only 2 toilets between them.
A monument to justice or repression, depending on who you ask. And behind those walls, the next question waits. Who exactly are the men locked inside this iron fortress? Lords of Chaos. To grasp why CECOT was built like a fortress, you have to look at the men it was made to contain. These are not ordinary criminals. They are the leaders of the most feared gangs in El Salvador's history. Once free, they ran neighborhoods through murder, threats, and fear. Inside CECOT, they have lost their weapons, their soldiers, and their power. But make no mistake, these are the same men who brought El Salvador to its knees. The two major gangs, MS13 and Barrio 18, didn't start in El Salvador. MS13, or Mara Salvatrucha, formed in the 1980s on the streets of Los Angeles. Salvadoran immigrants, fleeing their country's civil war, joined forces to protect themselves. But when many were deported back home in the 1990s, they brought gang culture with them. El Salvador, already weak from war, became their new playground. With little law and lots of poverty, these gang members recruited young people and built their criminal networks fast. Barrio 18 had a similar story. It also began in Los Angeles and fractured into deadly rival groups. When deported members landed in El Salvador, they clashed with MS13 in brutal fights for territory. The result was a wave of violence that claimed thousands of lives. By 2015, gang violence helped push the nation's annual homicide count past 6,600. Streets became war zones. Families buried loved ones. Entire communities lived in fear. Now, many of the masterminds behind that chaos are locked in CECOT. One MS13 leader is serving 1,500 years for more than 500 crimes. His list of offenses includes murder, kidnapping, and extortion. Walking through one of the prison's cell blocks, you spot a prisoner whose body tells his story. Tattoos of skulls, crosses, and gang symbols cover him from head to toe. Once feared and untouchable, he now lives under a 24-hour watch, shackled and silent. Some inmates now sleep beside members of their rival gang, a tactic that would have been unthinkable outside prison walls. The government uses this strategy to break down gang loyalty. According to prison director Bellarmino Garcia, mixing rival gangs neutralizes their power.
Garcia claims every person in CECOT is an active member of a terrorist organization.
They can't organize when they're watching each other. In CECOT, there's no trust, even among former allies. Old enemies now share cells, eat together, and live in constant tension. Surveillance cameras catch everything. Guards don't let them forget who's in control. Many of these men were behind the massacre of 2020. That bloodshed shocked the nation and gave the government the reason it needed to act. Now, these former gang bosses sit in a place built to strip them of influence, dignity, and control. They are no longer leaders. They are inmates, locked in steel cells designed to break their will. But locking them away wasn't enough. The government knew that to truly end the reign of terror, it had to go deeper. It had to erase the very identity that made these men powerful in the first place. Stripping the identity of terror. How CECOT erases the legacy of gang power. Inside the world's highest security prison, punishment goes far beyond bars and isolation. It targets the very symbols that made these inmates feared. At CECOT, El Salvador's fortress of control, the state isn't just locking away the most dangerous gangsters from MS13 and Barrio 18, it's dismantling the identity that once gave them power.
Built to isolate El Salvador's most dangerous criminals, the Center for Terrorism Confinement.
From their tattoos to their rituals, CECOT is stripping every mark of mayhem off these men, forcing them to shed not just their weapons, but their sense of self. Gang tattoos, once bold emblems of status, are among the first things to go. The teardrops, skulls, and gang numbers that once commanded fear are now liabilities behind bars. CECOT enforces a policy where inmates must either cover or remove these markings. Prison staff shave heads and issue identical white uniforms to erase individual identity. In some cases, prisoners are forced to undergo painful tattoo removal procedures, often leaving behind scars. These scars don't represent pride or defiance anymore. They're reminders of a lost rank and a world that no longer exists. The assault on identity doesn't stop with ink. Inside the prison, the gang's coded hand signs, slang, and rituals are banned. Any attempt to communicate in the old ways brings punishment, often solitary confinement.
Fort CECOT opened in early 2023 as the centerpiece of President Nayib Bukele's anti-gang crackdown.
Even more disruptive, CECOT mixes rival gang members in the same cells. This forces former enemies to share space under tight surveillance, breaking down old alliances and replacing gang unity with distrust and tension. The prison turns their brotherhood into isolation. CECOT also severs emotional connections. Inmates receive no family visits and are banned from owning personal items.
Loved ones and lawyers have no way of contacting those inside.
This deepens their isolation, cutting them off from the outside world and weakening any emotional ties to their former lives. According to a 2023 report by Cristo Sal, some prisoners describe the loss of their gang as more painful than prison itself. That void becomes a weapon, breaking their spirit day by day. The deeper purpose is clear. CECOT isn't just about control, it's about erasure. The prison aims to leave behind not just broken gangsters, but men who no longer recognize the reflection staring back at them. What remains when the symbols are gone, the rituals erased, and the brotherhood destroyed? In CECOT, even memory becomes a prisoner. CECOT doesn't just destroy the gang lifestyle, it dismantles the very essence of who these men were. But as the prison system grows harsher and more extreme, a darker question emerges. In the pursuit of peace, how far is too far? Justice or tyranny? CECOT may be the toughest prison on earth, but the real battle isn't just inside its walls. It's in the fight over what it represents. Is it a bold stand against lawlessness, or a descent into state-led abuse?
CECOT was a powerful symbol across Latin America.
President Nayib Bukele's war on gangs has delivered results. Crime has dropped, streets feel safer. But the world is now asking, at what cost? When the government declared a state of emergency in 2022, it gave police sweeping new powers. Warrants weren't needed, detentions stretched for days. 2 years later, 87,000 people had been arrested, but many weren't caught in the act. Instead, they were picked up for wearing tattoos, living in the wrong neighborhood, or simply looking suspicious. Critics argue that the line between justice and profiling vanished. Cristo Sal, a major human rights group in El Salvador, reported at least 241 deaths in prisons during this crackdown.
Human rights advocates here in El Salvador say that CECOT, the famous mega prison, even for its notoriously harsh conditions, is actually one of the better prisons in the country.
Some died from untreated illnesses. Others showed signs of abuse. Inside CECOT and other overcrowded jails, rooms built for 80 men now hold over 100. That kind of crowding brings disease, stress, and violence. Inmates can go weeks without medical care or legal help. and the court system struggles to keep up with mass trials now common. Hundreds of suspects stand accused at once. Many are denied proper lawyers. Some have waited months behind bars without a single charge filed. This violates international human rights standards, according to groups like Human Rights Watch. Even children haven't been spared. About 1,000 minors have been arrested, some as young as 12. In 2023, a heartbreaking case gained attention. A 16-year-old honor student was arrested because his name resembled that of a gang member. He spent 6 months in jail before being released. His mother had stood outside the police station for weeks, crying and begging for news. She didn't even know if her son was alive. While Bukele later admitted that some arrests were mistakes, he defended the broader campaign. The arrests haven't slowed. Inside CECOT, life is harsh. Inmates are punished with beatings, isolation, and long periods in solitary cells. Medical help is often denied. The goal is to crush gang loyalty, but some say it crosses the line. The United Nations has condemned these prison conditions. Amnesty International has tracked disappearances and mysterious deaths in custody. Still, President Bukele remains firm. He insists that saving lives from gang violence means taking hard steps, and many Salvadorans agree. After years of fear, they see him as the first leader who fought back and won. But that victory carries a heavy price. Families have been torn apart, innocent people have suffered, and basic rights have eroded under the weight of fear.
Stories abound of innocent people swept up and lost with no recourse in a brutal system.
While the crackdown within El Salvador's borders raises serious questions about human rights, the reach of CECOT is now stretching far beyond. As foreign governments join forces with Bukele's regime, the prison that once symbolized national control is turning into an international holding cell, and the consequences are just as alarming. The deportation trap. CECOT was built to hold El Salvador's most dangerous criminals, but now its gates are swinging open for prisoners not only from within, but from across borders. In a dramatic twist, the prison has become a final stop for gang suspects deported from the United States, deepening the prison's reach and sparking new concerns about fairness and human rights. In March 2025, the U.S. government, led by President Donald Trump, signed a $6 million deal with El Salvador.
Over the weekend, the U.S. pressed ahead with another deportation flight of alleged gang members to El Salvador.
The agreement allowed for the deportation of 278 suspected gang members, most of whom would end up inside CECOT. The policy was part of a broader U.S. effort to curb migration, but instead of only targeting proven criminals, many of the deportees were flagged based on limited or unreliable information. Things like tattoos, prior arrests without convictions, or vague intelligence reports. This practice mirrors what happened in the 1990s. Back then, the U.S. deported MS-13 members to El Salvador, which helped the gang problem explode across the country. Human rights groups now warn that history may be repeating itself, with dangerous results. One case that shocked many is that of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He was a 34-year-old Salvadoran who had built a quiet life in Texas. In 2025, after a routine traffic stop, he was mistakenly labeled as a gang member and deported. Despite having no criminal record or known gang ties, Kilmar was sent straight to CECOT.
These are the conditions at CECOT, the infamous mega prison where Kilmar Abrego Garcia was first detained.
In court documents, he pleaded, "I'm a father, not a criminal." His wife stood outside the immigration office in tears, uncertain if she would ever see him again. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem publicly praised the deportation deal. In a March 2025 video, she stated, "Break the law and you'll face CECOT cells." Her warning was aimed at deterring illegal immigration, but it ignored the fact that many people, like Kilmar, may be wrongly targeted. Human Rights Watch estimates that up to 20% of El Salvador's current detainees, including deportees, have no clear gang connection. Yet once they are inside CECOT, they receive the same treatment as hardened criminals. There is no separation. They sleep in overcrowded cells, receive limited food, and have no access to family or legal help. One mistake or false label is all it takes to disappear into the system. El Salvador defends the deportation policy, calling it a key tool in its fight against gang violence. U.S. officials say the deal keeps American streets safer, but critics argue that the arrangement is careless, punishing people without proper evidence, and overwhelming CECOT's already strained capacity.
CECOT was a powerful symbol across Latin America.
As CECOT becomes a dumping ground for foreign suspects, a larger question arises. Is this truly justice, or a flawed machine trapping the innocent alongside the guilty? CECOT was supposed to be the end of the line, a place where El Salvador could lock away its worst threats. But now, it's become something much bigger, a symbol of global debate, a prison where national policy, foreign agendas, and human rights collide. As deportation deals grow and innocent lives get caught in the cracks, the world is no longer just watching El Salvador, it's watching CECOT, and what they see depends on where they stand. The world watches. CECOT is no longer just El Salvador's problem. It has become the world's spectacle. Built to cage the most evil, the prison has turned into a global flashpoint, drawing mixed reactions from world leaders, journalists, and human rights defenders. As stories of CECOT's strict control and brutal conditions spread, the world watches.
Human rights advocates here in El Salvador say that CECOT, the famous mega prison, even for its notoriously harsh conditions, is actually one of the better prisons in the country.
Some with admiration, others with growing alarm. In April 2025, international media outlets were granted a rare look behind the prison's walls. CNN and BBC reporters walked through cold corridors lined with silent inmates, many of them former members of the infamous MS13 and Barrio 18 gangs. Their bodies told the stories of their past lives, tattooed symbols of violence, fear, and survival. One CNN reporter described the experience as stepping into a world where freedom no longer exists. The Salvadoran government carefully managed the tour, highlighting state-of-the-art security and order. But what the cameras didn't see raised more questions than answers. Not all media got in. Al Jazeera was denied access, and instead focused on the legal chaos surrounding the prison. Their reporting highlighted how many deportees, especially those sent from the United States, face indefinite detention without trial. Critics argue this violates international law and human rights norms. The silence around due process only added to global unease. American politicians have also entered the conversation. In March 2025, U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem visited the facility. She praised its role in the Trump administration's deportation deal, which sent hundreds of suspected gang members into its cells. Noem described CECOT as a model of strength, but not everyone agreed. Senator Chris Van Hollen, a Democrat, was denied access to the prison, but later met with Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a wrongfully deported Salvadoran detained inside.
These are the conditions at CECOT, the infamous mega prison where Kilmar Abrego Garcia was first detained.
After their meeting, Van Hollen called the prison conditions deeply traumatizing on national television. In a dramatic move, House Democrats flew to El Salvador in April without warning. They met with local officials and demanded Garcia's release, pushing for more oversight and accountability. Their actions added fuel to an already growing fire of international concern. Yet, despite the backlash, some countries are studying CECOT's model. The sharp drop in homicide rates in El Salvador has captured attention, even if the methods used raise serious ethical questions. For the outside world, CECOT is a point of debate, a prison admired by some and condemned by others. But for those trapped behind its towering walls, the arguments don't matter. Cameras may come and go, politicians may praise or protest, but inside, life continues, grinding, brutal, and merciless. To truly understand CECOT's impact, you have to look beyond the headlines and into the daily nightmare its inmates endure. A day in chains. If CECOT is where the most evil are kept, then this is what their punishment looks like. Endless, controlled, and stripped of all dignity. Inside El Salvador's mega prison, life is a harsh routine, built not just to contain, but to crush. For inmates from MS13 and Barrio 18, each day is a battle against hunger, heat, and the heavy weight of survival. This is not just prison. It's a machine designed to erase identity and spirit. The day begins at 4:30 a.m. Steel doors slam open, echoing through the massive cell blocks as guards yell for the inmates to rise.
And they've probably got another 30 plus. So you're talking more than 100 people in some of these cells now.
In rooms built for 80 but crammed with over 100 men, some get bunks, but many wake up on the cold floor. There are no pillows, no blankets, just bare concrete or metal slabs. Muscles stiff from poor sleep and hunger, they shuffle into a line as breakfast arrives. There's no variety, only cold beans or watered-down rice served on metal trays. Forks and spoons aren't allowed. They eat with their hands, in silence, while guards watch. The food doesn't meet basic nutritional needs. On average, an inmate receives fewer than 600 calories a day, far below what's needed to stay healthy. Most lose weight quickly, bones push against skin, energy fades, and illnesses spread faster in the heat and crowded air. At 6 a.m., guards pull a few inmates for exercise, but even that comes in chains. For 30 minutes, they walk or do push-ups in a concrete yard under the constant eye of cameras and armed guards on watchtowers. Back in the cells, the atmosphere is tense. Though MS13 and Barrio 18 were sworn enemies on the streets, inside CECOT, they must share space. There's no separation, only thin lines of tolerance. One wrong look or word can trigger a fight, and here, fights are not forgiven. To avoid punishment, inmates whisper in code, trade food scraps, and build fragile packs to survive. Each cell has 2 toilets, but they're usually clogged. The smell is unbearable. There is no privacy, and water is rationed by guards. With no windows and constant artificial lighting, time loses meaning. The fluorescent bulbs never go off. Day and night blur into one long, sleepless stretch. Inmates are locked inside their cells for 23.5 hours each day. They get no visits, no contact with family, and only short video calls with public defenders, many of whom are overwhelmed or delayed by court backlogs.
As in all others across the country, loved ones and lawyers have no way of contacting those inside.
By night, they curl up wherever there's space. Some lie awake, others mumble prayers, but all feel the weight of isolation. This is CECOT's true power, not just locking people up, but making them forget who they once were. The walls hold their bodies, but it's the daily grind that captures their minds. So what becomes of a man after months or years spent in this cycle? Echoes of regret. If El Salvador built CECOT to house the most evil, what happens when evil starts to feel human pain? Inside this mega prison, the punishment runs deeper than locked doors and steel bars.
The State Department official told a federal judge that he is no longer housed in El Salvador's notorious CECOT prison.
It reaches the mind. For many inmates, once ruthless gang leaders, the silence, isolation, and loss create cracks that no concrete wall can hide. The real sentence isn't just time, it's being forced to live with the past. After weeks in these conditions, some begin to lose touch with reality. Inmates have reported hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there. Mental stress builds fast, especially for those thrown into solitary confinement. Small, dark rooms where light is cut off completely. Some remain there for up to 15 days. This isolation breeds a torment that is mental as much as physical. Human rights monitors like Cristosal have documented extreme anxiety and confusion in these inmates. This breakdown is no accident. The prison's design is deliberate, meant to tear down the spirits of those who once instilled fear in the streets of El Salvador. Many who once bragged about their crimes now whisper regrets. However, not all inmates find regret or redemption. For many, the physical toll of CECOT is just as damaging as the psychological one. Malnutrition only makes things worse. Food portions are small and low in nutrients, causing weight loss and weakness. Some inmates suffer from untreated diseases like tuberculosis, which not only hurts their bodies, but also wears down their minds. The dire conditions of the prison, which have already claimed the lives of over 200 inmates since its inception, add to the despair.
This government footage of El Salvador's so-called mega prison went viral when it was released in February.
Many live in fear that they might be next. The physical and mental anguish often intertwine, creating a sense of hopelessness that cannot be ignored. Still, amidst the suffering, some inmates attempt to hold on to pieces of who they used to be. They share scraps of food. They whisper stories of family. These small acts of memory and kindness are all they have left. In moments like these, even in the harshest conditions, They cling to their humanity, however fragile it may be. CECOT was built to break gangs, but in doing so, it breaks men. For some, regret is a sign that their past no longer controls them. For others, it's a reminder that there may never be a future. In the silence of their cells, the loudest sound is the one they can't escape, the echo of who they used to be. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.